Mandela's Children's Fund, just returning from the inaugural Africa Children's Summit. 6 children chosen by the fund represented South Africa at the event in Nairobi, a platform to allow kids to voice their opinions on child-related issues and the challenges they face. With me in studio, I've got Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, CEO of the fund, and Shaylet Sibanda, one of the participants in the summit. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. Linda, if I could start with you. You are the CEO of the Children's Fund of the Nelson Mandela Foundation.
No, of the fund.
Oh, sorry, of the fund. Sorry, I always connect the two. The Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. Thank you so much for joining us in studio. But you heard there from the President speaking on the sidelines after visiting the Moseneke family. And I'm sure with a close relation, the brother of the former Deputy Chief Justice, Dekgang Moseneke, also having close relations with the Children's Fund, you'd like to express your sympathies.
Absolutely. We'd like to express the deepest sympathy of the Board of Trustees of the fund, as well as of the staff of the fund, to the Moseneke family on the passing of the brother of the Deputy Justice, who was very integral in the forming of the Children's Fund in 1995.
And indeed, what we know about that family has always been core to both their activism as really young children. We know about the role that their mother played, and that, of course, also driving the work that the Chief Justice did at the time, family being key.
Family being key, and children being such an integral part of families, and ensuring that those families are key in protecting and raising children that are wholesome human beings, as we can see with the family of the Chief Justice. Yes.
Let's go back now to the reason for your visit here today, the inaugural Africa Children's Summit. Before we speak to the most important person here, give us a synopsis of what led up to the summit being put together and how you went about choosing your very important participants.
Okay, so I think first of all, it's important that people understand what the Children's Fund is. And it's the first of the 3 legacy entities that the former president put together. So in 1995, the Children's Fund was put together. And I'm sure you have heard it said that President Mandela used to say there is no keener revelation of the soul of a society than in the way it treats its children and youth. And so the vision of the fund was to ensure that we can really change the way that children and young people are being treated. I mean, the earlier report in Soweto tells you that our soul as South African society, rotten to the core.
Broken.
Absolutely, absolutely dark soul that we have. So the Children's Fund has got as one of his programs a program that focuses on child safety and protection. And this summit was an opportunity for us to be able to be part of what we're wanting to do here in South Africa at a larger level, to have children involved in decision-making and in the processes of what affects them in their daily lives as children. So we went about choosing young people to be part of this summit because it was a child-centric summit. They ran the summit themselves. They decided on the theme of the summit, seen, heard, engaged. They decided on what the outcomes from that summit would be. And we just sat and listened. And really it's our hope that we will host the next summit here in South Africa. We've put our hands up. There's 3 countries competing, bidding to host, and we are one of the 3 countries that have put our hands up so that we can be more involved as a country in ensuring that children are actively involved in the decisions that we tend to make for them without consulting them.
Now, Shaylet Sibanda is one of the participants. You've just come back all the way from Kenya, from Nairobi, where the summit took place. Tell us a bit about yourself. You're 16 years old, you live here in Johannesburg. When did you find out about the summit and that you were picked to be one of the very few participants to travel all that way to take part?
Okay, so my name is Shaylet Sibanda, and I'm all the way from Johannesburg. Yeah. So I live in Beria with my parents and my little sister and my twin sister. So I'm part of the Nelson Mandela Legacy Academy, which is an initiative hosted by the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. So when I was told that I'm going to Kenya, I was very shocked. I didn't know what was going on. A lot was going on in my mind. But then I soon processed everything, and I saw that this is a great experience and an opportunity for me to voice out for the children of South Africa and the children of Africa.
Tell me a little bit about your experiences with the Academy and what you've learned there.
So currently we have a project going on as the Nelson Mandela Children's Legacy Academy. We have a project that goes towards us going about the voting system of children in South Africa, or if I can say the youth of South Africa. So that project is currently going on. We started the project in February, and it's going to go on till August, if I'm not mistaken. And it's an ongoing project as we speak right now. When I was in Kenya, I just met up with a few friends that I made in Kenya to ask about their alternatives, that what are they doing to make children and youth in their countries vote.
Now, from what I understand, this summit wasn't just with children taking part. You were actually leading the discussion, putting the program together, and under the theme, as Linda's just said, seen, heard, and engaged. What was that like? Because we live in a society that's still quite traditional, and children are always thought to know their place. You know, you sit on the sidelines while mom and dad, or grandma and grandpa, or the pastor takes the lead. What was that experience like to see children who look like you, who sound like you, who have similar experiences to you, actually take that lead? Did it feel good?
So before we left for Kenya, we had a brief meeting here in South Africa with our chaperones that we left with, and they told us that this is a child-led summit. So I was like, no, you know what, we're just going to go there, listen to the adults speak. But then when we got there, so the first day, the Kenyan delegation were the one that led the whole summit. And the night before the second day, they came to us as the South African delegation, asking us to come and MC or moderate the sessions. And we were like, okay, it's fine. It's a challenge we accept as the South African delegation. And we did it. We were proud of ourselves. It was a really great way of exposing ourselves, voicing out to the world, voicing out to Africa and all the countries out there and all the people out there. It was a very fantastic experience.
And that part of the experience must have been so important, Linda, because, I mean, you look at the statistics. The youth population in Africa is something that we speak about all the time. But we're not seeing them being given the platform. And by youth, we're talking about 16-year-olds. We're not talking about those other definitions of youth that we almost always giggle about in South African society. It's not something that's coming. It's something that's here. Children have access to social media platforms. It's a huge market in the African continent. The time is now for children not to be spoken down to, but for them to lead the way. Because goodness knows, they might probably do far better than the adults have been doing in leading the continent.
That's a very important observation that you make, Marcel, because, you know, the children that we have now are very different from the children that we were. They've got access to information at their fingertips. And when you listen to what they've got to say, you understand the importance of making sure that we do nothing for them without them. And I think we need to start trying to create a world where safety for children is not defined by us, but where they are able to say, this is what makes me feel safe. And then our responsibility becomes creating what it is that they've defined as making them feel safe. I mean, the average age on the continent is about 19.1 years. So how can we say that we can create a future world when there is this demographic that is going to be actually in that future world and is not being taken into account? So it is important that we amplify the voices of the 35-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, I don't want to talk about. They've got their own agency, but it's these vulnerable ones. And if I have my way and get South Africa to host the summit next year, I want us to get down to having age-appropriate conversations with 5-year-olds and hear what they've got to say, because we're not giving them a platform to be able to say anything at all.
Listen, you should speak to my 2-year-old. You can have a full-on conversation with her. Shaylet, I was wondering, you spoke about the new friends that you've made at the summit, because you've now have friends from all over Africa. I mean, how cool is that? Did you find it was easy to communicate with them? I mean, we obviously often talk about the bad things in society, but obviously there were other things you could relate to each other about: culture, music, social media, TikTok, you know, all of these things. Did you find that there was a lot that you had in common, both positive and negative?
So the friends I really made, they're really interested about South Africa. Let me just say, each and every child that was in the summit was really excited. And to see us South Africans part of the summit, because I can say they really love Trevor Noah.
Oh, is
they really love him. And they also love Kanyimbao, if I have to say. So we related a lot, and they really wanted to learn more from us, because I can say the East African countries see South Africa as a developed country, so they really want to learn from us, but then we also want to learn from them. We want to get alternatives from them to solve the issues that we're facing here in South Africa. Yes.
Just very quickly, because we've run out of time. You saw we just spoke to the president, who interrupted your interview at first. If you had the opportunity, after your experience at the African summit, and we know that the Namibian president just met with the South African president, you know, so we're always trying to galvanize those relationships with our African brothers and sisters, like you guys just did. If you had an opportunity to sit down with the president today, what would be, you think, the most important thing that he should be focusing on in his job when it pertains to children in South Africa?
So I think the most important thing the president should focus on now is child participation, as it was one of the sessions we had in the summit. So it's child participation and quality education, because as the South African delegation and other African delegations, we raised issues such as education. So we want quality education. We want education whereby each and every South African child and each and every African child can get access to quality education, as it is a right for everyone, every child, to get education. Yes.
Well, there you have it. Seen, heard and engaged. Thank you so much. Shaylet Sibanda was a participant for the South African squad who went to the Africa Children's Summit, the inaugural one, as part of the team that's gone with the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund to attend that in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much. We also had the CEO, Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo. And best of luck in getting that summit to come here next. The more we can have these platforms for our young people, the better. We thank them for their time this afternoon. We'll have more after the break, including